So even though I am explaining the concept of fatigue creep fracture, so don't think that I am talking only on those three topics. These topics are required for some portion of first module. There is a plastic deformation by slipping and twinning. There is a edge dislocation, the screw dislocation. In second module, iron carbon diagram, and first half of the module, as already we are discussing about fatigue creep fracture. That's the regular topic. Then complete module 3. So these concepts are required. Don't think that I am talking only about fatigue creep fracture. So these concepts are required for almost 60% of the material science what I am discussing. So whenever a PPT is there, the corresponding with photos, I am explaining the fundamental concept of the plastic deformation, the twinning, slipping, the precipitation hardening. So those concepts covers almost 50 to 60% of your material science. So only once you understood, then so you can refer any textbook, either maybe you can refer standard textbook or any local video prescribed textbooks or video books. Then you can read and understand. You can write the examination. You can score good marks. But understanding the concept, so only if you attend the classes, then you can understand better without spending too much of time. Without attending the class also, we can may pass the examination with good marks. But when you're going for the practical aspect, or when you're facing the interview, they'll ask question by question. They'll answer, if you answer one question on fatigue, then one more person is some more question on fatigue related to fatigue. Then in such cases, you should be able to answer. And competitive examination also, once you know the fundamental, then only you can attempt some question. VT examination or some other examination you can clear, but competitive examination like GATE examination, engineering service examination, only they are testing your fundamental, not applied knowledge. Applied knowledge you are going to study in higher semesters. After fifth semester, sixth semester, you are going to study some applied subject like your mechanics, composite materials, or it may be your some smart material. Those are the applied the material science. So that's why wherever chance is there, wherever some PPT is there, I may not put the same PPT in heat treatment. I am not put the same PPT in talking about your first module. But wherever some PPT is there, I'll explain with respect to considering your first module as well as your third module. Even for composite material, that comes under fourth module, as well as even fifth module, it's again considered talking about the material. Everywhere these fundamentals are required. So now we are talking about you have to increase the strength of the material. I hope PPT is visible now. Yes or no? Please respond.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we have pure metals, and other side there is a alloying, and you are most of the time in module 4 as well as module 5, you are studying about different alloying material, the different non-metallic materials. So when you're going for the alloy, it has more strength. Everyone knows, if you refer any data and book also, if they'll get pure aluminum strength is so and so. If you alloy with some alloying element, then its strength is different. It is higher strength. If you go for pure iron, the strength is less. If you go for alloying with carbon, the strength may increases, hardness may increases, the toughness may increases. So why that's even every engineer knows. But being a mechanical engineer, we should know why the strength increases by adding alloying element. That's the first part. Second part, for a given application, we require specific strength. Like you are at some cases, if the member is subject to tensile loading, then you have to improve the tensile strength. Like a crane hook. So where crane hook is subject to tensile loading, not compressive loading. There, the crane hook material should have good tensile strength. The fan rod should have good tensile strength. Building column, steel, that will be steel column, that should have good compression strength. Depending upon that, you have to add alloying element. You should be able to recommend So what are the alloys to be added to improve the specific strength for that reason? So that is what is a solid solution. Once you say solution, next part of your second module is you're talking about the iron carbon diagram. In module 3, you're talking about heat treatment. There's a heat treatment also, there is a solution. That is what is a solid solution. You're talking about the precipitate hardening process. So what you should know what is precipitate. You studied about grain boundaries. Grains you are familiar. I'm not going to talk about more about grain. There is a grain boundary. Already you have seen many photos. So when if you heat the material to the certain temperature, at grain boundary, some atomic bonding will take place. Like we have, let it be around Fe and carbon. Fe and carbon join together and finally it forms one more compound like Fe3C. That is a cementite. So cementite is having different properties. It is more harder. That means at the grain boundary, some reaction occurs, some bonding of the atoms occur happening. Because of that, the material get hardened. Because most of the time, grain boundary sliding takes place. Because of the sliding of the grain boundary, it is having ductility. Ductility is mainly because of the sliding of the grain boundary. Ductility or plastic deformation. The plastic deformation mainly because of expansion of the elongation of the grain. So why elongation occurs? Why elongation can stop? If you reduce the elongation or plastic deformation, you can say that it's having good strength. So all those things will happen in the grain boundary. If new compounds are found with new bonding, then those compounds are referred as a precipitation. In the chemistry, you studied precipitates, and you might have conducted some experiment also. Whether you're in the first semester, you had chemistry, or second semester. Which semester you had chemistry?
First sem.
Huh?
First sem.
First or second?
First sem, sir.
Okay, definitely we know what is precipitation. So when you are taking two or more reactant, so you are adding two reactant, some third material will emerge or precipitate out from the reactant. That is what is a precipitation. You are familiar with the term precipitation in the liquid state. In the similar way, the precipitation occurs in the solid state also. Imagine we are talking about the simple iron carbon alloy, like a steel or plain carbon steel. At the grain boundary, some bonding will take place and new compound will be formed. If you add more and more amount of carbon, that is nothing but Fe3C, that is cementite. The cementite is having higher, harder structure. Cementite is formed at the grain boundary, and cementite will precipitate out from the grain boundary. Don't think that material is coming out from the. Imagine you have a steel rod. Don't think that cementite or precipitate is coming out from the grain boundary. So new precipitate or new intermetallic compound are formed at the grain boundary. That type of hardening process is referred as a precipitation hardening. Only if once you understand the solid solution, the grain boundary, what are the drawbacks of the grain boundary, what are the imperfections in the grain boundary, then only you can answer the third module, that is the precipitation hardening treatment or precipitation heat treatment process. So now our basic question I asked is, so when you add alloying element, or if you add some like a carbon, so now new compound will be formed, or sometimes with no new compound will be formed. Suppose you are adding ceramic material to the alloy. Imagine material is in the molten state, you are adding alumina Al2O3 or silicon carbide SiC. Those are the harder material and brittle material, small powders I am putting into the molten metal. So once it is solidified, the aluminum metals are soft, the ceramic materials are brittle and harder. So now we already studied about the slip plane, etc. So when it is subject to loading, imagine this is the slip plane. Suppose this is a slip plane. Simple example is you are in the classroom, you try to come out from the classroom. Suddenly, if door is closed, we cannot come out. To come out, we have to break open the door. You have to put additional effort. Imagine we have a slip plane, slip to get plastic deformation or elastic deformation, slip plane should move in a particular direction. So now you can imagine the slip plane. So it is moving in the forward direction. So when it moving in the forward direction, so you are moving towards door, suddenly door is closed, then you cannot move further. In the similar way, this ceramic particle in the metal, we are talking about in the solid state. So this is, it will stop or hinder the movement of the slip planes. Or finally, you can conclude in the macroscopic level, you can conclude we required huge amount of force to get small amount of deformation. For a rubber of 10 centimeter, if you pull it, it elongates without much difficulties. If you have the same 10 centimeter steel rod, if you try to pull, so it will not elongate freely because it has lot of the obstacle to movement or atomic movement or plastic deformation or elastic deformation. These obstacles are mainly because of the alloying element or new compound is formed once you add alloying element like a precipitate. There is a here precipitate. So this slip plane will try to move in the forward direction. This extra half plane on slip plane. So there is a precipitate. Because of the precipitate, it will block the movement of slip plane. But still, if you add additional forces, you have to apply huge amount of force to overcome this precipitate, like a humps. If it is like a Bangalore BBMP hump, there is a big humps. So you require more force to vehicle to move. Your vehicle speed is suddenly slowed down. Even if you don't apply the brake, also it is slowed down at the humps because there is an obstacle to movement of the vehicle. In the similar way, there is a one extra plane of atom. Whenever extra plane of atom is try to move forward direction, there is an obstacle. The obstacle is nothing but an alloying element or new compound is formed because of addition of alloying element. But still, if you apply a certain amount of load, so it will break the precipitate particle or alloy. So that breaking the alloy is nothing but breaking the bonding between the atoms. So you are not breaking the atom. So you are try to break the bonding between atom 1 and atom 2. So that required more amount of force. Then such type of process is referred as a precipitation hardening. So now when you come to heat treatment, there's a third chapter, but still the based on this concept, where we are heating the material to the red hot condition. We are not adding any alloying element in the case of heat treatment. So material is available in the market. You have to remember the material is available in the market. You are going to conduct some heat treatment experiment also in material testing laboratories. So you are taking steel metal piece, you are putting into the furnace. So once you're putting into the furnace, temperature of this metal is increases. Then at the grind boundary, because of higher temperature, more activities takes place. Like your Diwali time or Navaratri time, lot of activities are taking place in temples or many other places, public places. In the similar way, when temperature increases, the atoms start jumping from one grind to the another grind, or it forms new compound because of higher temperature. Because even chemistry is conduct some experiment, only if we heat to the certain temperature, new compound will be formed, or new compound will be precipitate out from the solution. Precipitation best example is we have a curd. If thoroughly mix it, then we'll get ghee also will get. So in the similar way, new compound will be formed. So at higher temperature or elevated temperature at the grind boundary, such type of heat, then you have to cool down. Such type of heat treatment is referred as the precipitation heat treatment process. You are heating the material, then you are taking the compound from the furnace, you are taking it outside. You have to, before heat treatment, you have to find out what is the hardness of the material. After heat treatment, you have to find out what is the hardness of the material. If it is precipitation hardening, then definitely hardness of the material is increased. But we are not increased any alloying element, you are not added any alloying element, you are not melted the material. Still material is in the red hot condition. You are heating below melting point temperature of metal in the case of heat treatment. This is a one kind of heat treatment. I am giving introduction to heat treatment also. So you cannot read only the heat treatment. Some concept you are taking from different models. There is a one more strain hardening process. So we can increase the hardness by heat treatment process. That's one process. The one more process is by adding more and more amount of carbon during your casting process itself, because up to 2.14% the carbon, it is steel. If you add more amount of carbon, it will become cast iron. The cast iron metals are brittle material. We can increase the hardness of the material by adding more amount of carbon. That's one option. The second option is heat treatment. Third option is what is the strain hardening process. The strain hardening process, most of the time it will happen during your forging process. You may conduct some experiment. You may see some of the videos of forging. It's simple. You are red hot metal. You are hammering it. It may be flattened, or maybe length of the specimen may increase from circular cross section to rectangular cross section, etc. During that process, material undergo plastic deformation. So whenever material undergo plastic deformation, there is a strain. Because of the plastic deformation and strain, the hardness of the material increases. That is referred as a strain hardening process. So because of the strain hardening, we require more amount of force. Strength of the material also increases. The best is a schematic diagram. So imagine we have a mild steel. This is a mild steel. So it is have more ductility. The strength of the mild steel is less. You can see here height of the stress strain diagram gives strength of the material. The height is less. The length of the stress strain diagram is more. That indicate that the more ductile. If you go towards this percentage of cold work means imagine material is beaten, hammered. So once it's hammered, material get hardened. Percentage of cold work means imagine you have 100 mm, it is reduced to 20, increase the length by 10 mm, then percentage of cold work is 10%. You have to understand what is percentage of cold work. We have 100 mm rod, steel rod, you are heated during your forging process. Its length is increased by 10 mm. Then we can say that it is a 10 mm cold work. Don't think that it is a hot work. Even though you are heating the material to the red hot condition, it is not referred as a hot work. It is referred as cold work, because you are heating the material below recrystallization temperature. There is a one temperature. If you heat the material to recrystallization temperature, still it is referred as a cold work only. Then because of the deformation, because of strain, the strength of the material will be increases. So here in the second, it is already strain hardened, the strength will be increases. If you go like this along percentage of cold work, the height of the stress strain diagram increases. Height of the stress strain diagram is ultimate tensile strength. Same material, we are not changing the material. You are taken one steel rod, it is deformed. You are finding out at 10 steel rod you are taking, you are deforming the one steel rod by 10%, another steel by 20%, another steel by 30%, another steel by 40%, etc. Then you are conducting tensile test. You are plotting the graph where material undergo huge amount of plastic deformation. There, the height of the stress strain diagram is more. That indicate that the strength of the material is more, but ductility is increased. Or we can say that huge amount of force is required to get small amount of plastic deformation. That process is referred as the strain hardening process. Later stage, you are using the term strain hardening. So it is the hardening process, not by heat treatment process, not by adding more amount of alloying element like carbon during casting process. It is just deform and you are getting material get hardened. Like your crane hook. The crane hook having more strength because it is forged. If the same crane hook is produced by regular casting process, it may take, imagine you have the same around 3 crane hook of the same material like a steel, mild steel. The one crane hook is produced by casting process. Another crane hook is produced by like your casting. One more is by forging. So one more by welding process. Casted crane hook may take only 100 kg at 1 ton of load. For the same dimension, material is the same. The forged, it may take around 10 ton. Same dimension, same material. Because the forged material having good strength because of the strain hardening. Because most of the crane hooks is produced by the forging operation, not by casting. Same, even though same material, same dimension, whatever it may be, it is having good strength. That is our concept is after the code working process. When you are talking about the fatigue cycle, so in the case of fatigue cycle, all loads are not static. All loads are not cyclic loading. Only some loads are dynamic load. Like the dynamic load also, there is one type of loading is after the cyclic loading. Its magnitude changes with respect to time. All dynamic load, the magnitude changes with respect to time. But in the case of cyclic loading, the magnitude changes periodically, uniformly with respect to time, like a sinusoidal variation. So now we can say fully reversed, it's a fatigue loading. And give the example of 100 megapascal plus 100 megapascal and minus 100 megapascal. So now when you come to topmost position of this curve, it is let it be 100 megapascal. When you come to the bottom, it is minus 100 megapascal. Then once again in the next revolution, it goes to up and comes down. That's your magnitude of the stress will be increases, changes from minus 100 megapascal to plus 100 megapascal. Imagine you have the steel rod, you are pushing and pulling it. When you push it, then it will be 100 megapascal. When you pull it, it is plus 100 megapascal. If you push it, it is minus 100 megapascal. The same thing is shown here. Those are referred as fatigue loading or stress reversal In such cases, the range of stress may be from minus 100 to plus 100. The total range may be minus 100 minus of minus 100 plus so and so. It will be total range is from minus 100 to plus 100. The total range will be 200. There is an alternative component, amplitude ratio. The stress ratio is sigma minimum by sigma maximum. Sigma minimum is minus 100 megapascal. Sigma maximum is plus 100 megapascal. The stress ratio is 1. Sometimes you have to find out the mean stress. If you take the same example, sigma maximum is 100 plus 100. Sigma minimum is minus 100. It will be 0 divided by 2. Again 0. The mean stress is 0 for sinusoidal curve. Or if force is represented by sinusoidal curve, the mean stress value is 0. So now this is a typical bending fatigue test. Already you have finished the fatigue experiment. This is the block diagram, schematic diagram showing the basic principle of fatigue. So this is bearing housing. This is a specimen. Specimen is mounted between two bearings. It is subject to bending load. Bending load. As this specimen rotates, it is subject to alternate compression as well as tensile loading. We have fatigue experiment you see. You finish the fatigue test. The specimen is rotating. Other than rotating, it is hanged with some weight that we cannot see from the outside. In the video, you might have seen. So that is nothing but a load. Because of the loading, top fiber of the material is subject to compression. Bottom fiber is subject to tensile load. That's why they have mentioned minus plus. The top portion is compression stress. Bottom portion is tensile stress. There is a high speed motor. Motor also you have seen. So there is a flexible coupling. There is a counter. You have seen all those information. This is a static. This is about a rotating bending test. It is subject to bending load. Specimen is subject to bending load, and specimen is rotated. It looks very simple. To develop sophisticated equipment from this arrangement, minimum around 4 to 5 lakhs is required. We have purchased the machine, fatigue testing machine. It costs around 6 lakh rupees. So there is only few components. One is high-speed motor, coupling. There is a two bearing housing, and one shaft. This is a specimen and whole mounting arrangement. There are two types of fatigue. One is small number of cycles. If the number of cycles is less than 10 to the power of 5, then it is referred as low cycle fatigue. If the number of cycles is more than 10 to the power 5, so then it is referred as high cycle fatigue. Then there is a SN curve. S is for the stress, N is for the number of cycle. You have to remember. So S is for the stress, and N is for the cycle. To understand this curve, I am taking one example. This I am taking the example of mild steel. Imagine there are 10 mild steel specimens, fatigue testing specimen. For one specimen, I am applying 100 kg of load. When you apply 100 kg of load, the specimen breaks at 10 to the power 5 revolution. I am applying 100 kg of load for the first specimen. Once you apply 100 kg of load, after 10 to the power 5 revolution, 10 to the power 5 is I think around 1 lakh, the specimen breaks. We will get one breaking point here. Next, I am applying this. I am 100 kg I am given. Next, I am applying 90 kg of load. Not 90, that will be 50 kg of load. Then when you apply 50 kg of load, you are applying lower amount of load. The specimen breaks at 10 to the power 6. 10 to the power 6 revolution. The best example I can give is to understand this curve better. Imagine one person, I am loading 50 kg. I'll ask him to run. He may stop or collapse after 10 minutes. 50 kg of load. I am taking one more person. I am loading with only 25 kg of load. He may run for another 20 minutes. I am considering one more person. I am loading with only 10 kg. He may stop after 1 hour. I am giving only 1 kg of load on one person, last person. I am telling him to walk or run. He may run forever. Carrying 1 kg is not difficult. So that is nothing but the fatigue limit. So that means at one particular load, irrespective of number of cycle, the specimen will not break. That limit is referred as a fatigue limit. If you apply 100 kg of load, it fails at 10 to the power 5 RPM on revolutions. If you apply 50 kg, it will break. Specimen breaks at 10 to the power 6 revolutions. If you apply only 10 kg of load, let it be 1 kg of load, the specimen will not break at all, because it is almost similar to carrying one person carrying 1 kg of load. So it will not collapse or fall because of the loading. If it is 50 kg or 100 kg, you may collapse or fall. But if you are having 1 kg, so it will not collapse. That is a limit. That is a fatigue limit. So it is curve is for the mild steel, but for aluminum alloy, we don't get fatigue limit. If you decrease the load, then more number of cycles it can undertake. You will get curve like this. But in the case of mild steel, there is a decreasing. Then it comes almost horizontal. For mild steel, you can say that there is a definite fatigue limit. For aluminum alloy or non-ferrous alloy, we don't get fatigue limit. So finally, it is the elongation, crack formation, the crack propagation, the plastic deformation, elastic deformation. All those things will be taking place in the grain level or in the grain boundary level. If you have any doubt about this curve, it is not a stress strain curve. The stress strain curve you can understand better. If you have any doubt about this fatigue curve, just you can clarify. It is not like your stress strain curve. The fatigue curve, the whole stress strain curve is drawn with one specimen. The fatigue SN curve is drawn with n number of specimen, because we require n failure point. Do you have any doubt about SN curve? You can get clarified if you have any doubt. Because in next semester we have one more subject in the higher semester, 5th semester, that is design of machine element. There is a separate module only on fatigue loading. It's completely problematic. There you are going to study about the fundamental, what is happening during fatigue loading, what is happening in the material. So I am covering your fourth module, some concept and many concept I am explaining about third module, fourth module, fifth module. These concepts are required. Okay, if there is no doubt, I'll continue. Is PPT is visible? Because I reopen it once again. Yes or no? You have to respond. At least one.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So SN curve. This is the SN curve because in the examination.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the examination, they may ask, explain the fatigue, how fatigue limit is determined. Then you have to write the block diagram of this fatigue setup. Then you have to, sometimes they may ask some question about SN curve. All the information is available in textbooks, in Punish textbook. But only thing is, you have to understand in the classroom. Then you read any textbook, you can you're able to reproduce. But the Punish textbook, they have given information according to the syllabus. That's why I'm suggesting. But at the beginning of the semester or after, or a few months, 1 month, few weeks before your test, better I strongly suggest you to refer Calistar. But before test or before examination, I suggest you to refer the Punish textbook. It's Punish. Why I am referring is it is almost similar to your covers almost your syllabus topic. But when it is for non-ferrous material, there is no definite fatigue limit. If we apply 10 kg of load, the material, if we apply that's 10 to the power of 8, this 50 kg of load, it fails at 10 to the power of 8 revolutions. You are talking about the revolution, number of revolution. So revolution you have to understand. Once you say the RPM of your engine is say 1000 RPM. That is revolution per minute. 1 minute there is 1000 RPM revolution. If it is 60 minutes, how many revolution? The RPM of the engine is, let it be 1000. In 1 hour, how many revolutions? In 1 minute, it is 1000 revolution. In 1 hour, the 60,000 revolution, because every minutes the shaft is rotated by 100 revolution. But in 1 hour, the 100 into 60, the 1000 into 60, it will come 60,000 revolutions. In 1 hour, if the fatigue test is conducted, the running speed is around 1000. In 1 hour, there may be around 60,000 revolutions. Like bearings of the fans, etc., it is calculated or it is expressed in terms of the 1 millions of revolution or 2 millions of revolution. Especially important component of spacecraft or aircraft bearings life is predicted. You are saying that the life of the bearing is, you are not talking about 10 year or 15 year or 20 year. You are saying that 1 million revolution, 2 million revolution, 5 million revolution, etc. There is no definite fatigue limit for the ferrous material like aluminum, copper, etc. In such cases, for the given load, so what is the fatigue limit? You have to find out. If you apply 100 kg of load, the fatigue limit it may be only fatigue limit may be around 1000. That will be around 10,000 revolution. If you apply 50 kg of load, the fatigue strength or limit is maybe around 10 to the power of 7 plus that will be around 10 to the power 8 revolution. After 10 to the power 8 revolution, component may fail. Those are the fatigue limit. We are talking about the fatigue strength. Sometimes they'll ask you to ask for the definition. Stress at which fracture occur after specified number of cycle. So your fracture occurs. So these are the fracture point. If we apply, let it be around, if you apply stress load of 100 kg, the fracture occur at 10 to the power 4 revolutions. If we apply only 10 kg of load, the fracture in the specimen occurs at 10 to the power 9 revolution. Even one of our MTech students is doing project and he is testing. If you apply only 1 kg of load, specimen will not break. When you apply 5 kg of load, They run for almost 10 hours. 10 hours is almost like a 6 lakh revolution. Our machine can have capacity of almost 10 lakh revolution. More than 10 lakh, it will not go because counter limit is, that's all. It will not go. It will reset once again. That is fatigue strength. The fatigue strength is you have to specify with respect to the size. This one is with respect to stress at which fracture occur after specified number of cycle. Normally it is referred to 10 to the power of 7. For 10 to the power of 6, if you draw one vertical line, if you draw one horizontal line, this is give the fatigue strength. For 10 to the power of 4, the number of revolution is 10 to the power of 4 specified. The corresponding fatigue strength is maybe around very high. Your fatigue strength you have to specify with respect to number of cycle as well as with respect to the weight or loading condition. There is a fatigue life. Fatigue life is, I say, I am giving one person loaded 50 kg. After carrying it for 1 hour, he may collapse. He may not die. He may collapse. That 1 hour is the fatigue life. In the similar way, the fatigue life, if you apply 100 kg or 100 kg of life, 100 kg of load, the fatigue life is only 10 to the power of 4 revolution. If you apply 10 kg of load, the fatigue life is 10 to the power of 9 the revolution. That way you have to understand what is fatigue life. You are specifying the stress value. In the case of fatigue life, you are specifying the stress value. In the case of fatigue strength, you are specifying number of cycle. I hope you understood. These are slightly different from conventional subject and other topics of material science. There are many fractures occur. You have to understand between fracture and fatigue. In the case of fatigue, the specimen breaks. So crack is generated or nucleation takes place. Crack nucleation takes place. Crack is formed. Nucleation starts and finally breaks. In the case of fatigue, even fatigue specimen you have seen, there is no any notches. Even it should be highly finished. There is no scratches. But when you're going for the impact test, there is a notch is there. There's a crack, macroscopic crack. You can say macroscopic crack or surface crack. But in the case of fatigue, there is no crack. Inside crack material, you are saying that material is homogeneous. The crack is nucleated in the material when it is subject to fatigue loading, push and pull loading. That is the best example is, imagine you have a steel rod, you are pushing and pulling 100 times per minute for 5 hours or 10 hours, 15 hours. Then at one particular point, the void is formed. So because of this pushing and pulling, void size will increases, crack will be formed and finally fails. There are many components that failed because of low temperature fatigue. So whenever temperature decreases, hardness of the material increases. Imagine some ship is designed where for higher temperature, like India. When it goes to some countries, temperature may be low. When temperature is low, there is a transition from ductile to the brittle. There is a study about ductile to brittle transition. In India, temperature may be around 30 degrees, normal temperature. The material's behavior is ductile. But if you take the same ship to some US state, their temperature may be very low. It may be around 5 degrees, sometimes maybe 5 degrees. So if this 5 degrees comes in the transition temperature, it crosses the transition temperature, this complete metals or some component of ship is become brittle. So once it become brittle, it may undergo brittle fracture. It behaves like a brittle material. So because of that, many, especially during World War, many ships are failed. Many aircraft are failed because when you're moving from one continent to the another continent. One of the example is low temperature fatigue is Liberty ship. The produced during the World War II were the first all welded ships. Mainly it is failed by catastrophic failure. Catastrophic failure is nothing but a brittle failure. Ductile failure, there is a warning. There is a slow failure because there is a huge amount of plastic deformation. Catastrophic failure means it's a brittle failure. The fatigue cracks nucleated at the corner of the square hatches and propagated rapidly by brittle fracture. The crack is nucleated and finally, even though material is at room temperature, it may be ductile, because of low temperature, it behaves like a brittle material. Brittle fractures occur. That is one of the examples. If you want, you can Google it and find out further if you're really interested. So these are the salient features. I'm not going already explaining. Everything is explained. Factor causes the fatigue failure is sufficiency high. If you add more amount, if the loading is very high, it may undergo fatigue failure. And if you fluctuating stress is more, if the stress magnitude is ranging from -200 to +200, again component may fail. And large number of stress cycle, that is number of revolution is increases, again number of stress may fail. This already you have seen. This is imagine this is a tensile. I'm giving the example. Your magnitude of the stress ranging from +100 to -100 megapascal. It is simple. You can imagine pushing and pulling the steel rod. When you're pulling, the stress developed in the material is 100 megapascal. When you push it completely, stress developed in the material is -100 megapascal. If you plot your stress versus time, you will get the cyclic curve. Stress value will be ranging from -100 to +100. Or instead of saying -100, you are saying is a minimum, sigma minimum. The sigma max is +100, sigma minimum is -100. If you take the sum, it will become 0. We can see here. The range of stress is nothing but -100 to +100. You are writing into sigma max, minimum, sigma min. Amplitude stress, sigma max, sigma minus. This is the formula. Mean stress is sigma max, same +100, -100 divided by 2. +100 -100 becomes 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. The mean value of the stress is on the 0 line. These formulas, everything is available in the book. So there may be random fatigue loading. Most of the vehicles are subject to random fatigue loading. Whenever it goes, vehicles are driving the vehicle in like a BBMP roads or roads are in the good condition, then it may be subject to cyclic loading. The variation may be very high. This already you are discussed. As per your syllabus, they mentioned you have to remember different types of fatigue loading, the stress reversal, experiment fatigue, experiment block diagram, SN curve. Those are according to your syllabus. There is a fatigue mechanism already explained. Sometimes they may ask, but old syllabus it was there because earlier syllabus, old syllabus, fatigue, creep, and fracture. That is a single module earlier. Now it is only half module. According to new syllabus, you have to study only fatigue SN curve, how to produce the SN curve, what is fatigue strength, what is fatigue life, what are the SN curve for steel material, and what are the SN curve for non-ferrous material. There are different mechanism. One is Wood's theory, one more Oravan's theory, Cotterill-Hull theory. I'm not going in detail, already explained. So whenever member is subject to fatigue loading, there is a continuous, in the grain level, lot of changes will happen, and finally crack will nucleate in simple way. So whenever material is subject to the fatigue loading, push and pulling, the grain will be compressed. You are talking in terms of microscopic level. Grain will be compressed, elongated, compressed, elongated. Like you're moving the. I think I don't get any better example. So now grain, there is a sliding will takes place, expansion will takes place, contraction of the grain will takes place. Because of that, there is a grain, the movement along the grain boundary. So wherever there is a more expansion and contraction, the crack will be formed. That is the, what is that? Crack nucleation. Then crack growth, and finally crack will grow further and failure takes place. That is the mechanism. That is Wood's theory. If it is static loading, the elongation takes place in only one direction. Suppose you are pulling the steel rod, the steel rod is only elongates. Grains inside the steel rod, you can imagine the microscopic level, only elongates. But when it is subject to fatigue loading, there is a push and pull. Because of the push and pull, once at one particular time, the grain is elongated. One particular time, the grain is compressed. Because of that, some crack will be generated, like a small notches will be found. Don't think that it's a macroscopic level. This side, total height of this notch may be 0.01 mm. You have to remember it is 0.01 mm, maybe 0.01 mm or less than 0.01 mm. Don't think that we have get different steps in the outer specimen. The step size may be few microns, you can say. So now when it is subject to fatigue loading, I am giving the example, we are pushing and pulling, there is a lot of increase and decrease in the length of the grind. There is a push and pull, the extrusion and intrusion. Because of extrusion and intrusion, the new crack will be formed. This is the crack, new crack will be generated. Those cracks are referred as a fatigue crack. In the case of fatigue, the crack is nucleated and propagated. In the case of fracture, the crack is already there in the specimen. It may be micro crack or macro level crack, like what you are saying in impact testing. The crack will propagate and finally failure takes place. Now you can see here. So member is subject to pushing as well as pulling. Because of that, grains will move up outward and inward direction, and finally microscopic this will be formed. Microscopic crack will be formed. Here we can see here. Those are referred to extrusion and intrusion. Some grains will be extruded because of pulling. Some grain may intruded because of pushing, and finally small cavity will be formed. Those cavities are referred as a micro crack or fatigue crack. My monotonic load is, the loading is only in one direction. Imagine you are pulling the steel rod in only one direction, then the deformation pattern is totally different. When it is subject to pushing as well as pulling, then the deformation pattern is totally different, and finally cavity will be formed. There is an intrusion and as well as extrusion, and crack nucleates. What machine we have is a bending fatigue test. There is a push and pull fatigue testing machine. So there we can get these type of intrusion. That will be a little bit costly. And if you go for a high level of push and pull fatigue testing machine, it costs around 70 to 75 lakhs rupees with a big good brand. So now you can see here, finally on the surface we'll get some micro cracks. We can see this side may be only few microns. This is the actual photograph. This is the schematic diagram. These are the actual photograph. We can see extrusion and intrusion by using the scanning electron microscope. You can see this extrusion as well as intrusion. This is the actual photograph. We can see small cavities, small extrusion or intrusion because of fatigue loading. This is the actual photograph. These are the schematic sketch. In the examination, if you write schematic sketch, that is sufficient. Normally, they will not ask as per new syllabus, but still there may be chances of asking the question. See here, this is one more schematic sketch. This is a surface. It looks like a plain surface, but there is a micro crack on the surface. The crack will propagate, and finally the failure takes place. We can see here, localized slipping takes place. Slipping means we have one grain is slips over the another grain. Imagine if you are familiar with the card playing, one card is slips over the another card when you are playing the card. In the similar way, there is a one grain is directly in contact with another grain. Because of that, the slipping takes place, and finally some small micro crack will be formed. This is the actual photograph of this slipping and micro cracks. So we can see here there is a micro crack here. So now where the micro crack will form, there may be weaker grain. So there in the weaker grain, the crack will originated like a immunity system. We are talking about the immunity system during the crisis of corona. All people may not die. Only 1% or 2% people may die. Imagine there are 100 grain in the material. Out of 100 grain, all grain, the crack will not propagate. Only there may be some weaker grain. Only those weaker grain, immunity is less, are less resistant to the fatigue loading. Only those grain, the crack will be nucleated. You can see there are many grain. At one grain, it is weaker grain. Like imagine the aged people or less immune people, their crack will propagate and finally failure takes place. Imagine the cycle chain link. The chain link may fail, even one link fails, but which link will fail? Only one link which is having the lower strength. So like that, everywhere you are talking about these are the fatigue cracks, schematic sketches. These are the actual photograph. So don't worry about, no need to draw these photographs. If you write schematic sketch, it is available in book, that is sufficient. Don't worry about this. But understanding this, you have to imagine these photos. So now you can see here, these are the grain. The crack will propagate and finally polycrystalline material. This is one crystal, this is one more. We have a small rectangle. Those are rectangle. The schematic representation, those rectangle refer to grain. Like that, there are many, even when it is subject to tensile loading, the grain will be elongated. When it is same specimen is subject to compression loading, grain will be compressed. Because of that there is a dislocation movement, dislocation slip, dislocation glide. Because of all those things, finally end with the plastic deformation or this one. This is the actual photograph of fatigue crack development. For crack nucleation, you can see here. This is a crack nucleation. The fatigue crack nucleation you can see because of non-metallic this one. I think we'll continue in the next class. These are some of the aircraft fails because of the fatigue failure. You can see at Hawaii Aloha flight, that is flight name is 247 Boeing 737. Upper part of the plane cabin area rips off in the mid-flight. Metal fatigue was the cause of failure. You can see if there is if proper material is not chosen for aircraft, design may be very good, the fabrication may be very good, the failure may occur. You can see the disaster. Imagine if you are in the aircraft, whatever is our condition, or that's why material knowledge is very, very important for mechanical engineering. Because of corrosion fatigue, the bridge is collapsed. You can see the bridge is collapsed because of the corrosion, fitting corrosion. It is complete all the portion of fatigue as per your syllabus. There will be some more example I'll show in the next class. I think next class tomorrow I am going to finish, and day after tomorrow class I am going for the composite material. So after finishing composite material, I may go for the iron carbon diagram. First I'll finish composite material. It is applied material science. I can go a little bit fast. It is only memorizing the metals, application, properties, structure, etc. Not studying much fundamental. We require more time for module 2 for the fundamental. First I finish composite material, then remaining portion of second module I am going to cover. Okay, I'll leave the session. Those who are not entered your USN number, please enter your USN number. I'm going to stop recording. Once I stopped, then your name may not come in the chat box. I hope everyone has entered your USN number, because I'm going to stop recording. I'll give another few minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, because one more class will start. Unless and until I stop recording, he cannot start recording. Those are not enter your USN number. Enter your USN number very fastly. Your name and your USN number. I'll give another 1 minute, because one more session starts. That professor cannot start recording unless and until I stop. Those are the technical issues. Still, some students are entering your USN number. Do it fastly. I hope everyone is entered your USN number. Hoping that everyone has entered your USN number. I'll go first. Stopping the record. I'm going to stop the recording.